Business Connections Live, the UK's leading online business channel. This is Business Connections Live with Steve Hyland.
Hello there, welcome along to Business Connections Live, the program for entrepreneurs, SMEs and business owners just like you. Now on today's show, we're going to be discussing how to talk about your products and your services so prospects want to buy them. What an interesting idea that is. Got a good guest with us as well today. Joining me in the studio is David Richards. He's the founder of an organisation called Talk About Value. David, great to have you with us on the show today. Thank you very much for coming in.
Thanks for being here, Steve. It's lovely to be here.
Now, you've been on before, but in a different guise. But today we're talking about value and also how we position ourselves when it comes to talking about value. For those people that don't know who you are, though, just give us a brief summary of your background.
Basically spent the last 35 years working in various marketing departments and organisations across the engineering, the computer and more recently training environments. And I think what's been really interesting, Steve, is that over that time I've observed a lot of interesting ideas regarding how to use value to promote and to grow your business. Sometimes honestly successfully and sometimes not so successfully. And I founded the business Talk About Value to really bring that to life and to help other people who are struggling with what value is to understand how they can make best use of it and as a result grow their companies more
and that's important, isn't it? Because I think sometimes when you say let's talk about value, there's a misconception that all you're talking about is maybe a statement that you make and then you move smartly on. It's about identifying the value within your organisation and then doing something with that once it's identified, isn't it?
I think it's even more important than that, because I think we generally talk about value for money. So we normally look at value as an economic value rather than looking at things that are perhaps more human. So you might think, well, actually I've got my pricing right, but when you go out and you bid for a piece of business, you find you don't win it, and that's because the people looking at you, the customers, have decided there's a piece of value that other people are offering better than you, and actually price isn't their issue. So I think one of the things that's really important to value is it's not just economic value or financial value or return on investment, although that's really crucial. It's about all the other things surrounding that, the different sources of value that you can use to exploit within your own organisation.
When you go into an organisation, what are the things you find yourself saying the most often? Is there kind of a stock phrase you think, this is the same mistake I've seen before, it's the same, that they're doing it the same way again, and you find yourself saying, look, contemplate it a different way, look at it a different way, analyse it slightly differently, come at it from a different angle. Do you find yourself saying that?
There's one question I always find I ask, and that is, when you last won a piece of new contract, and your last new contract, did you ask your customers why they bought from you?
And how many people say yes, they did?
Very rarely. As you may know, in the corporate land, I remember times where the MD would say, come on David, let's go into the office, we've lost this piece of business, and you have a post-mortem on it, and you go through it and you try and work it, and there's quite a lot of blame. People are saying that other things should have been done and all that sort of stuff. Now I'd argue that probably rather than doing that, you should have gone to the customer and asked them why you lost the business, because they'll tell you directly. But when you win a piece of business, why don't you find out why that person won it from you in the first place? What was it about what you sold them that they really liked? And you might find it's not price, it's not necessarily your brand, it might be something else. It might be something about the way you handle the relationship, the way you took their phone call and responded to them. It may be that you're adding thought leadership, you're ahead of the game, you're considered to be a real thought leader. These are the things that people are looking for. It's not a rational approach, it's all about money and perceptions and experiences and relationships. All that builds into a whole model about what value is. Because the thing about value, Steve, is however much we talk about it, it's a bit like beauty. It's in the eye of the customer, or the eye of the beholder. we may have a view on what value is, but actually it's the customers who decide what it is. They are the ones who ultimately sit down and say, right, that's what I value about your business.
So would you say then we are in the age of the customer then? The customer has all the cards.
You've taken the word straight out of Forrester research in the States. They basically stated that in the 1990 to 2010 was the age of information, which we'd understand with the growth of the internet and systems and computer technologies and software. But since 2010, we're in the age of the customer, because never before have customers got the opportunity to reach out and find information about products and services like they've ever been able to do before. There's virtually nothing on this planet you can't source from somebody else, either in this country or overseas. And what's happening is a lot of buyers are doing their pre-qualification of businesses before they even approach the company. So there's some statistics that say over 60% of particularly in B2B, the business selection process, the sales process is happening before they even touch the company. So if you're not seen to offer value on your website and all your communications, you're not even going to be shortlisted.
But this is an issue, isn't it? Because this is perceived value. I suppose that leads us on nicely. What is value? Because it's the perception of what value is. I know we've had talks before about pricing, and we'll get onto that a little bit later, but this perception of what real value is, do we as merchants, as suppliers, do we have one interpretation of it and the customer has another?
Probably, yes, that's probably the case. But what you need to do is find out what the customer think, or what groups of customers think. I mean, every customer is different, and therefore you say, well, why should I ask them? I'll get a different view. But customers will tend to group their needs together. You might call that a market segment, but basically they have similar needs. What we don't do generally in business is ask enough questions of our customers in a way that leads us to understand what value we're offering them. We're quite happy to have transactional conversations like, is this doing well, or can we do any more for you? But we're not asking questions like, how's this fundamentally changing the way you run your business? Are you seeing dramatic improvements in your productivity?
But isn't the sales technique what we're saying here is finding the pain that the customer is experiencing when you're going in and you're doing your pitch where you throw up all over your customer and you just keep, but you're finding their pain, so you're identifying. So is the pain that your customer has, is that where the customer will call it pain, but we call it, that's the value you add?
Well, actually, it's two. There's gains they can get. Let's look at the positive side as well. They can gain from implementing your solution, and you can solve their pains for them because they've got a problem they need to solve. I mean, fundamentally, that's what business is about, is solving other people's problems. But unless you fully understand their problems in a really deep way and understand what they value, and how they can see that value affecting and improving their business, either from a revenue point of view, a cost management point of view, a strategic point of view, an operational point of view, or even a brand point of view, you're not going to really get across what value you can offer that company. So as I said to you on about the, talking about the customers, if you ask at the point of winning a piece of business, why you won that piece of business, it's a perfect time to find out, before they've even experienced working with you perhaps, why they bought from you. And that's really crucial, because it can tell you things, or you might prioritise things that you didn't think were relevant.
So what examples are you looking at? What kind of things do you find customers will say back when you ask that question yourself? What do they say back to you?
Do you know, normally when I do it, particularly at networking meetings, they look a little scared, because I think everybody realises they need to talk to their customers, but they don't do it on a regular, formalised basis. They do it on their gut feel. And the longer you've been in a marketplace, you tend to trust your own gut instincts because you've learnt about it. I spoke to a very professional sales director once, and we're talking about why sometimes...
It's good to know, isn't it, that it was professional?
Very professional. One of the top people I know in the industry. And I said to her, so what is it about salespeople that they tend to go off the boil after a time? If they've been with a company 4 or 5 years, they tend to not do it. And she says, because they stop asking questions. They assume they know the answers to the questions that a customer have. And what she says that, in order to create value and to talk about value, you need to question the customers, because their needs change as well. I heard a really good anecdote the other day about this, where somebody... their kids broke their door Okay, the front door of their house. So they decided to go to a...
Were they trying to get out or in?
I think they were trying to get in, but who knows? So they broke the door and they went to the shop and they said, right, we need a new door. And the person said, so what do you want? She says, well, I sort of want the same.
A door.
I want a door. I want it to be a certain colour and with a certain fascia and glass and stuff. So they went back home, and within the time they were going to make the decision, they got broken into. They had a burglary and they came in through that front door. And suddenly the need had changed. The need no longer was how good it was or what colour it was, what glass was. It was about security. So if the person selling the door hadn't asked that, or that hadn't been mentioned in conversation, they might be offering a solution that didn't match what people wanted. So even with customers, and you think you know them and you've known them for years, there's a really good chance that the needs have changed, especially potentially with business strategies changing on a very regular basis, or new people coming into a role. You think it's going to be exactly the same as it was with the previous incumbent. To me, the important thing is keep that dialogue going and always talk to your customers about what they value about what you're offering them.
You mentioned there that this is something that you say when you go to networking events. Is it applicable to all sizes of companies? Is it the one-man band? Is that the same thing? Because one would imagine with the one-man band, when you're talking to your customer, it's more of a discussion. Larger organisations, when they are doing pitches for their organisation, they're going in and it's a big presentation that maybe the opportunity doesn't arise. So is it the same rules for everybody?
I don't think so. It's a really interesting question, because I think when you're starting off a business and you're finding your channels to market and you're working out how you're
looking for your own niche, aren't you?
You're looking for your own niche, and therefore by definition you have to understand your customers, because it's your day-to-day living, it's your salary, it's where you're going to get your next paycheck from if you get it right. I think as companies grow and you bring in a sales team and you bring in a marketing team, the objectives within those teams can be different. And what I found in my career is that you lose a bit of sight of the customers. Who owns the customer relationship? Is it sales, or is it customer service, or is it marketing? Certainly in organisations I've worked at, I've generally seen marketing not being very heavily engaged with customers, where in fact I think that should be one of their primary responsibilities, is to understand the customer, and the salesperson is trying to sell to that customer. So in my language, if you like, the marketing department need to look into the company from an outside-in point of view, rather than the salespeople are probably looking more outside-in. So they're basically trying to work out what the customer wants to buy, what the marketing people is trying to work out what values that prospect or that customer wants to buy from you. So it's a subtle difference, but I think the larger you go, I think you get further away from the customer. I think that's the reality.
More from David to come in just a few moments' time here on this edition of Business Connections Live. David Richards, he's the founder of Talk About Value. He's my guest on today's programme, and more from David in just a few moments' time. You're watching Business Connections Live. Great to have your company. We're live as always on a Monday at lunchtime. Don't forget, there's over 260 odd shows sitting on the website. You can watch any of those programs in their entirety if you wish, absolutely free. Everything from sales technique all the way through to marketing, social media, and a whole load more. Let's go back to last week's program. We had a great guest on the program once again, a colleague from the PSA. Alistair Greener was on the show, communication speaker and consultant. He was talking about why business relationships should be personal and not a process. Some really good hints and tips there. It's one of those kind of shows that when you're watching it, you think to yourself, that's just common sense, isn't it? But sometimes it takes, in the same way as we're talking to David here, it just takes someone to identify that common sense approach so that you can maximize the return on your investment in time in when you're talking to your customer, the way you react with your customer, and so much more. It was a really good show. If you haven't watched it, I do suggest you go back and watch the entire program. But here's just some of the highlights from last week's edition of Business Connections Live. Now, on today's show, we're going to be discussing why business relationships should be personal and not a process. Some interesting lessons to learn here on today's program, and we've got a real expert in the studio, TV presenter and all-round good guy as well. Joining me in the studio is Alistair Greener. He's a communications speaker and consultant.
I'm, as you mentioned, I run a company called Present Yourself, which is a training company, but we help people with presentational skills, media skills, things like that. But I also deliver keynotes about personalizing the personalization process. Because it's now easier to stand out from the crowd because you're not employing all of the text messages, the WhatsApp and so on. And I'm not saying for one moment stop doing that, but if you want to make a relationship a little bit more personal, a business relationship where your customer, your client is going to become a brand advocate for you, then it's actually going to be easier to stand out from the crowd because you're doing something that's different from other people. I once heard a great phrase from somebody who I interviewed, and he said, you know the trouble with today? We go straight into our sales mode and we start creating solutions for problems that don't exist. And it really comes down to listening skills. But I think also it's then when the communication does come through, how are you communicating? Are you communicating in a way that your client wants you to communicate? And we've seen lots of studies about mirroring methods of communication. You get an email back from them, you see the style they do, great, well let's email back to them in that same way so that that's clearly a way that they like. I'm Alistair Greener. I run a training company called Present Yourself. I also talk about making business relationships personal. In other words, take out the box ticking exercise and make those relationships mean something. I have a 5-step way of making sure that our relationships are more personal, more genuine, and are going to prove to be more valuable to us, not just personally, but also in business. Number 1, make sure that whenever you are having a business relationship, it is about the person you're having a relationship with. Don't create solutions for problems that don't exist. Listen to your customers, understand who they are, get underneath the veneer, get underneath that surface and really get to know them. And they will become your brand advocates because you have that relationship with them. Secondly, I always think it's important to go one step beyond. Don't just say it. Don't just say about putting the customer at the center of everything you do. Actually think about ways that you can do that. Try not to oversell and underdeliver. Make it the other way round. Have some nice surprises for your customers and your clients that they suddenly think, I wasn't expecting that follow-up call. I wasn't expecting those extra course notes that you've given me. Whatever it is for you, though you can give extra value to your customers, that's a way to make yourself memorable and, more importantly, trusted. The next thing is communication. We are very, very busy today. We've got emails flying backwards and forwards. What we don't want to be doing is chasing up our clients. Well, guess what? Your clients don't want to be chasing you up. So always be proactive in your communications. Get ahead of the game. Look at the way they communicate with you. Are you reflecting that in the way that you communicate with them? Make sure that whatever communication you have is to the point, it deals with what you need it to be, and is doing something to extend that relationship. It's not a stock standard generic email. Remember I said, ban that word generic. We don't want it. We want to make sure that it's real and it's authentic. Then, talking about being real authentic, it's about getting personal. Be as personal as you can on it. But maybe I should review that, but be personal when you go onto social media, you go onto LinkedIn. Make sure you actually have a genuine interaction, that people realize that you have actually engaged with them properly. You're not just there whipping down through the list of everybody that you might think you want to say hello to that day. It's not about quantity, it's about quality of that communication. Then, of course, the final one is say thank you. Thank you for being my client. Thank you for helping me, and thank you for all the business that you're giving me. Simple little things. Once you've built up trust, once you've built up that relationship and your client knows you're thinking about them, just a handwritten note. Maybe it's a tray of cupcakes. Maybe it's a gift that means something personal to them. And we're not talking about spending a lot of money. It's the thoughtful thought that counts, as John Rulin would say. And if you do all of these things, and yes, will you do all of them? No, I don't do all of them, but I aim to try my best to do as many of them as I can. And that way I'm going to have business relationships that matter. They're going to be relationships that are going to recommend me. They're relationships that are going to become my brand advocates. And if I can do that, I don't have to spend so much money on marketing. I don't have to spend that much money on publicity, because all of my clients who I've been looking after will be helping me get more business. I hope it gets you more business, and just make sure you don't pay lip service to communication. You personalize the personalization process and make your business relationships personal, not a process.
Really great show. They're from Alistair Greener, communication speaker and consultant, about why business relationships should be personal and not a process. If you'd like to raise your profile, if you'd like to be a little bit famous, if you'd like to come on the program, have a show just like this one for your own organization, think how you could use it. You could use it on your social media campaigns. You could use it on your website. You could communicate with your customers. You could communicate with your own staff. You could get your message out there, raise your profile, and I love that expression, being just a little bit famous within your market sector. If you'd like more details on how to do that and have a program just like this one, get in touch with us here at Business Connections Live. It is an easy thing to do. All you got to do is drop us an email to studio@businessconnectionslive.com. Easy peasy lemon squeezy. Better still, let's pick the phone up and let's have a conversation, because that's where all these things start. 01784 256 777. Don't wait, you can do it right now. If you're watching the program right now, pick the phone up and call us. 01784 256 777. Call us, have a chat. Let's see how we can make you a little bit more famous. If you want to follow our stream of consciousness, BCL Business TV is our Twitter feed. Also, you can follow the program and leave comments as well if you go onto our Facebook page. But the best place to go for all the information and so much more is to go along to our website at businessconnectionslive.com. You're watching Business Connections Live. It's great to have your company as always. A live program each and every Monday. And today with me, I've got David Richards. And we're talking about how to talk about your products and services so that prospects want to buy them. David is the founder of Talk About Value, a great business, and he goes into a number of organizations and he chats with them about how they can increase and grow their organization simply by identifying what value is all about. And that leads us very nicely on to the different sources of value. What do we mean by that, and what are the sources of value?
Well, I think also we could do one step back, actually, Steve, which is what is value? Because, as we mentioned, value is sort of in the eye of the beholder. It's a slightly nebulous thing. Generally, people understand it when they don't have it rather than when they do have it. It's a bit like quality. You know when you have a bad quality. It's a bit like with value. It's the same sort of slightly ethereal concept. Most people, as I said, think of it in economic terms. So the language we use is value for money, cost versus benefit, return on investment. Those are the types of languages.
Good old ROI.
Yeah, it's good old ROI. I tend to look at it as a more strategic type of definition, and a particular definition. There are lots of definitions out there. The customer's willingness to pay, there's all sorts of different models. The one I particularly like is about impact. Value is the equation of impact minus the total cost of ownership. So what impact does your solution have on that company's success, be it their financial revenue growth, their cost savings, their operational, their management activities, their brand, and then what does it cost you to get those benefits?
But isn't that already identified by your customer, because they wouldn't be talking to you if they hadn't already identified that particular need? Is this just supporting the services and the products you provide?
No, because I think generally speaking, people don't fully understand the total value they can offer, and what they'll be looking in an engagement with a customer. They may not know that you offer products and services that are really valuable to them, because you can't necessarily put everything on a website.
But is this upselling then? Are you going in there selling them one thing and all of a sudden you're selling them a whole lot more?
No, because if you upsell, there's an implication that it's in addition to. This is actually a holistic approach, that old word, where everything is all together. So value needs to cover everything. So I see there's lots of books about value, and what I found is there are really 5 values or sources of value you can identify.
So it's just an opportunity. Get a pen and paper out now. You can be hearing the five sources. The 5 sources.
Okay, so number one is economic value. That's basically, as we talked about, value for money, return investment. You invest in a particular product, service or professional expertise, and then over a period of time you work out what it costs you and you do the equation, and that's your economic value. As I said, it also relates to the customers willing to pay. So that's the one we most understand. The second source of value is number two is the perceived value. Okay, and that's what where brand can play. If you've got a view that a particular company has a particular reputation or perceived brand experience or is well known in their field, you will intuitively put a value on that. You know, the old phrase "nobody got sacked for buying IBM" 20, 30 years ago was probably the classic example of what perceived value.
You know what it stands for, don't you?
Tell me.
I'm being mended. Moving smartly on. That'll be IBM on the phone then.
That will be, yes, yeah. Move quickly on, yes, Steve. So that's the perceived one. The next one is...
Number three,
relational. This is particularly important in B2B, business to business, rather than consumer, because you want to have repeat purchases. So you want to engage with somebody on a regular basis, and they will put a value on the relationships you have with them. So how you work with them, what information you provide to them, what knowledge you can share, what contacts you could have that might be of use to them, how you can help and give them ideas to take their business forward. So that's relationships, really important. So that's number 3. Number 4 is experiential.
Who?
Experiential.
Right.
That's what was your experience of them. So what was the engagement you have? So there's an anecdotal story. I'm sure many people have heard it before, but there's a CEO who had a reputation when he wanted to go into partnership for visiting the client's premises or the prospect's premises and going to the toilets to check out the toilets that the customers visited. And his view was, if you took the customer experience seriously, the toilets you provided to your customers will be top notch. They'd be clean, they'd be laid out nicely, they might even have flowers in it. When he went into a company where that wasn't the case, he would say, well, actually, perhaps, are they really taking the customer experience seriously? Are they spending time? Now, it wouldn't be a showstopper for that organisation, but it might give them an impression or help him get an impression onto how they looked at the experience. So how you answer the phone when you take the call, how quickly you respond to a phone message, how engaging you are on the phone, for example. These are things that people experience. Relationships, when you meet them, how polite you are, all that sort of saying thank you after receiving an order. Little things that you can do to improve it. It all builds up that bigger picture of experiential. And then the final one is social value. And we see this quite a lot these days, where people are saying, well, it's not just about the profit. I want to do something that gives back to the economy or it's eco-friendly. An example I heard the other day which summed it up was a lady who's setting up a business at the moment. She's collecting cotton shirts from adults, and then she's transforming them into pajamas for kids. Okay. And she's trying to find a business model to work that, and I think that'll be quite a challenge. But her idea is purely a social. Cotton. I didn't know this, but it takes a huge amount of water to produce cotton fresh. So if you can reduce the amount of new cotton that's required, you can reduce water requirements in certain countries. So she's thought, well, I'll create value by taking old, unused cotton shirts, putting through a cutting and sewing process, and then delivering nice quality pajamas for kids. And that's an example of using social value to your benefit.
Listening to what you're saying is, it seems there are 2 approaches to those 5 different points. One of them is, a lot of the time when you're approaching a company for the first time, maybe number 1 and number 2 will be the ones that you will be actually able to action, because they won't know the experience that they've had.
But how do you choose that number 1 and number 2, Steve? That's the challenge. We can all list down.
The thing is, you see, the experience circumstance, because it just seems to me that the journey can be quite difficult. Because if you're going in and you're talking to a prospect or a brand new client, the value that they will see will be the value that they choose, not the value that you choose.
Absolutely.
And the value that they choose is obviously going to be focused on what they actually feel they need.
Partly, or what you can...
Well, no, it will be. It's what they need, isn't it? Because now what you're doing is you're going into them and you're saying, well, actually, you're telling me what you need, and I understand your pain, but actually what you really need is all of this experience as well. And you're building up. I'm just wondering, do you get, the longer you are associated with a client, do more and more of these become more and more important? Do more of them pick up and become more important?
I don't think so. I think generally speaking...
I'm not having a fight with you, by the way.
No, it's fine. It's good debate, and it's a really good question, actually, because the reality is we can go back to our businesses and we can probably list out 20 benefits for our products that our customers would like. And the challenge is, which ones do they want? The only way to do is to ask them.
Yeah.
Okay? And you have to ask more than one. You have to ask 30 or 40 or 50 over a period of time of, here are all my benefits, which are the ones you value?
And the danger that you have when you do that is that you will go into a client. We've done it. You go into a client, you sit down in front of them, and what you're trying to do is you're trying to identify their pain. And what you do is you come along with your sack full of goodies and you tell them everything. You tell them all you demonstrate, you show them, you give them your ideas because you're investing in them with your ideas. And sometimes that can also go astray, can't it? Because here's your value that you're taking in.
Well, the ultimate with business...
It's not a fight, by the way.
The thing about business, it's all about matching what you're trying to sell with what people want to buy.
Yeah.
And you want those to be overlapping.
And you don't want to cloud it, do you?
No.
You want to be clear, objective, and you want to satisfy the purpose. Surely the value then comes from their experience with you, and the next step on after that where you can upsell and you can sell more of the...
Well, that's another topic we may come on to, is the loyalty. If you sell value, then you'll gain loyalty as a result of that.
Because I think this whole element, the whole element of this is fascinating. If you've ever dealt with people, I suppose it's the old thing, isn't it? You do not know somebody from Adam, do you, when they come in? And all you know is that they will provide a service that you're looking for.
I agree, but my experience in the real world in terms of working with sales teams...
As opposed to my fantasy world.
Which is a lot more pleasant, is basically that they don't address the more subtle and human aspects of value. They don't talk about perceived value or think about relationships or experience. They tend to focus on the ROI, what they know. It's easy. You want to buy this product, you want to sell it, let's talk about price. Oh, it's too expensive for you? Well, I'll take 10% off your price. And as a result of that, the business...
and that is the way a lot of salespeople work now, isn't it?
And actually, what you find if you do the maths is that you probably have to send... I think I read the other day, if you drop your price by 10% and you've got a profit margin of 25, you have to sell something like 50% more of the same product to get the same profit you had to start with. So discounting can go straight to your business line. It's really important that you try not to discount and offer value rather than negotiate on price.
More from David in just a few. David Richards, he's joining us today on the program, and we're talking about identifying the value and talking about the value of your proposition so that your prospects will want to buy your products and your services. I'm sure he's going to beat me up now. But I think this is a really interesting thing, and I think we don't think about this enough in business. We don't identify what our actual value is. I have a friend, and I know we're going to be telling stories, but I have a friend and I am convinced he is in a race to the bottom. What he's doing is everything is based on price, and as long as that price is covered, as long as he can get in there with a particular price, then he's sold it, it's done. But when in fact his value is a lot more.
But that is a legitimate strategy. I'm not saying it doesn't be. It means you're playing in a particular strategic approach where you're basically going for commodity. You're not
piling it high, selling it cheap.
Exactly. And I think Alan Sugar was on the television the other day being interviewed, and he said that's what he did with computers. That's his. So building massive market share, selling it at a low margin, you get the results you want. Okay, that works for some people. What I'm saying is that if you look at value, you can sell less of them more profitably and have happier customers. Because you're not selling commodity or something you throw in the next day and you get something else. You look at particularly in business to business, you want a longer term relationship. That's where your value is going to come.
Right. More from David in just a few moments. It's difficult. I should never have asked the second question. It's my fault. I know. I'm completely responsible. Okay, let's... it's interesting we're talking about pricing. We're talking about the whole area because we're going to give you the key takeaways from a programme, Improve Your Pricing, Increase Profits. This is Business Connections Live 235. It went on 10th of September last year. Mark Peacock was the guest on the programme. Now, on this edition of Business Connections Live, we spoke to Mark. He calls himself the pricing coach, about how businesses find themselves was in demand, or in a dilemma rather, of how to price the products and services that they offer. And the question was, why are they getting this wrong? And when they do get it wrong, it can have a catastrophic effect on their profitability. It was a really good show. If pricing is a real bane within your business, if it's something that you feel you just can't solidify, you just can't nail down and get right, then I do suggest that you watch his program. It was a terrific show with the key takeaways from that particular show. Here's Mark Peacock.
Thank you, Steve. So yeah, I'm Mark Peacock and I'm the pricing coach. What I've tried to explain to you today is that pricing doesn't have to be difficult or scary. There are loads of different ways that you can think about how you price your business and your products and your services. As Warren Buffett says, pricing is the most important part of your business in terms of adding value and creating higher earnings for you. I have 50 different pricing strategies that I use. You can see that there are plenty of different ways that you could price your business and your services. And then finally, I would say if you put price at the center of your business planning and your design thinking, it will put you in a much stronger position for delivering better value for your customers and improving your profits. So if you want to know more, please go to my website, which is markpeacock.co.uk, and also on there I'm offering a free pricing diagnostic self-assessment. So there's a form you can download and work out for yourself how good your pricing is. So please feel free to contact me via my website, and I look forward to talking to you further soon.
And you'll find all Mark's details on our website at businessconnectionslive.com if you go along to that particular program page. Don't forget as well, you can find this on iTunes too if you want to download the programs and watch them when you're heading to work. That was a very, very interesting program. It was the whole concept of how you go about pricing. And I'm going to ask you this before we get going properly. Pricing is a big hassle, isn't it? It's so difficult, isn't it?
It is. And again, value can play a really important part in that, because value and pricing are linked. I know, Steve, you would not go and buy a Rolls Royce for the price of a Ford Mondeo, and you think you would charge...
If I could, I would.
You would. But you wouldn't believe it's true, would you?
No.
You'd think there'd be something wrong with it. It'd been cut in half and stitched together by somebody else. And likewise, you wouldn't buy a Ford Mondeo for the price of a Rolls Royce.
No.
You've associated a value with the cost. And generally, branded goods, for example, high branded goods cost a lot, whereas non-branded goods don't, because there's a perception in the value of wearing a brand. That's what the value's about. Why certain shops, when they release a new range of clothes, there are people queuing up outside in order to get in because their perceived value...
This is the iPhone.
Exactly.
Can I just say, my guest on today's show is David Richards. We're talking about how to talk about your products and services to prospects and then want them or make them want to buy them, which is all about identifying the value. David is the founder of Talk About Value. But it's a very difficult thing, isn't it? This element, and I know you've got a story. When you do put together your pricing strategy, I mean, we've been through this whole thing ourselves just recently. You perceive the value that you can charge for it. You look at the customers that you're hoping to get. And what you do is that in your head, you price to what you think they can afford.
Yep.
When in fact what other people will do is that they will look at the services they are providing and they price to the value of the service that they are providing to that customer, which is a very different approach, because over here you may be pricing quite low, and over here you're saying actually there's a lot of value in what I'm actually offering here.
Well, the thing is, why wouldn't you charge what the customer is willing to pay?
Good question.
So long as you can justify your higher price, for example, by adding value, then they will pay more for that. So my view, and Mark Peacock and myself go back a long time, and I know his view is that the one thing he's trying to get across is that you need to break the link between cost and price, because traditionally in many industries, particularly in the service industries, you do it on a day rate, and you basically say, well, this piece of work is going to take me this amount of time, and therefore I'll charge that customer what it cost me to do plus a margin. Mm-hmm. It may be that actually they pay a far lot more than that, because they want other things in that equation. And I know of a company in the past, they were going for a deal, and they went in, I think it was with a figure of 15k in terms of trying to win the business. And I know the business actually went to a company that charged them 85k, even though technically I know that both companies could deliver the same solution. And that's because the company charging 85k had been able to persuade the customer that there was value, more value in what they were selling, maybe peace of mind, maybe guarantees, I don't know what it was, maybe certain technology or certain equipment or something that they could do more effectively. But it's nearly 5 times more expensive, and you think, how can you justify that? And the reality is they did, because they could justify the value. So if pricing is all about, as I said, the customer's willingness to pay. It's how you set it at a level, and you need to have conversation with customers to understand that. I wrote an article the other day on LinkedIn, and it was a slightly gimmicky one, which is if you took an A4 piece of paper as your case study, what's it worth? Is it literally worth its weight in gold? So I actually did the calculation. I took a piece of A4, 100 gram paper, the density of gold, the cost of gold today, and worked out that in gold, that piece of paper would be worth £5,500. Okay, that's what it cost you to make it in gold. If you got a testimonial and you've done a piece of business and you can generate 100 grand as a result of the confidence that gives, that's literally worth its weight in gold, isn't it?
It is indeed.
That's the sort of equation you need to think and to justify. Value's not easy at all. It's much easier to stick to products and services and sell what you know, because with value you have to understand what the customer thinks.
I suppose we're going through a process where some people are exchanging what they see as time, and other people are selling expertise, aren't they? It's the overnight success that took 20 years.
Yeah, and I think the reality, if you're selling time, what does the customer do when they see your price? They do the calculation. You say, I've got a day rate of £500. I'm going to charge you £1,500 for this piece of work. Right, that's 3 days' work.
Could you do it in 2?
Could I do it in 2? Right, even though that piece of work might involve you, for example, in strategic thinking or creativity, which you could say is a premium, and other parts might be just data bashing. It's you're putting themselves on a single level where actually you want to be offering different levels of value. And another thing I know that Mark is, and I'm particularly keen on, is when you're sending a price into a customer, don't just give them one price. Give them different levels of price. The phrase is good, better, best. You give a good product that will satisfy their basic needs. You'll offer them a slightly better one with more value at a slightly higher rate, and then you offer them an excellent service. Now, most people won't go for the excellence. They'll go for the middle one. But it does also set an expectation of what true value could offer, and sets in their minds an idea of what value for the price is as well.
All right. So let me ask you a leading question then. So, how do you build a compelling customer value proposition? I mean, this isn't just a mission statement. Tell me.
No. And I use a methodology that's well established these days. It's called Business Model Canvas.
Is that BIDL, Business Model Management?
No, that's the second version. This is the first version, Steve. I think you've read the wrong book there. It's called Business Model Canvas. And basically what it does is it takes you through a process of questioning. And what you do is you focus on yourself to start with, because that's what you know.
Right.
So you sit down with somebody like myself or on your own, and you just list all the benefits you offer for your segments. There is a piece of work in terms of saying, well, I'm in the marketplace, I need to identify my segments and who the decision makers are. But if you've already done that, many companies don't, but if you've already done that, you then focus on a particular segment, and you say, okay, what are all the things I could offer that segment? And you write down a list. Then what you need to do is then say, okay, let's look at it from the customer's point of view. Why do I think those features and benefits would provide opportunity for that customer or solve a problem for them? And you try and second guess what that might be. So you might find that it saves them money, or they can expand their marketplace. So you write that down, and you've got, if you like, your view of the world, the outside-in view. What you need to do now, you've created the value, you need to go and validate it. And the way you do that is you go and talk to customers, and you go and have value conversations with them to say, right, I just need to take some time with you to go through what I think, in effect,
free
I'm selling
consultancy.
to you. It's market research.
Yes.
Steve.
Okay, call it that.
Yeah,
Good.
market research. Because actually, it's in their benefit to tell you as well, because they want you to be successful. You know, if you want to do that matching of what you're selling to what people want to buy, they'll benefit from that. That's the whole point, in a way. You need them to buy into what you're doing and understand what you're offering. So go and talk to them. They'll also be quite pleased to share that information. That's my experience. They're very willing to feed that back. And it's a different conversation from doing a traditional customer satisfaction process. It's getting into the human side of purchasing rather than just the sort of academic side of it.
And when people do that, what are the expected results from that? Is it a case that they will take some of the things that they thought were important, they'll take them off the list?
Well, two things. Firstly, you might identify areas of value you've missed completely. You might identify areas of value that you can offer but you're not charging for. Or you might even find that you can prioritise your value for that segment. So you might say, instead of having 25, I've identified 4 things of value that really resonates with that sector. So when you do your marketing comms, your website, your case studies, your collateral, your press releases, they basically focus on those 4 for that segment. You don't have to do lists or get confused. You know, because you've asked the question, that the people you're trying to talk to understand these areas of value more than others. Okay, there may be other sectors where you change that. Brilliant idea I saw recently. Went into Boots, the pharmacist. There's a well-known vitamin brand, and they had vitamins for the over 50 woman and vitamins for the over 50 man. Okay, I looked at the back of it, and the ingredients are pretty much the same. You looked at the features in terms of why you should buy it, and it was different between the female and the man. Okay, because what they'd done is they'd gone to the men and said, what are the things that you want to get out of a vitamin supplement? And they went to the women, and they were different. So rather than having one product, so they've now got 2 products. And I, as the customer, when I go there, I say, that's for me. It's not just a generic product. That is for me. It's targeted over 50 man. Yeah. It's.
I can see that.
Thank you, Steve. And I'm sure you'd have the same product with me. So I think it's really interesting to focus on the values.
Over 60, man. It's not very nice. You're fired.
So I think this whole thing of value is being clever about understanding your market in terms of how you break it up and the needs of segments that you identify, and then playing back to those people the needs that they want to buy. It's not rocket science. And this week is a really there is 50 years since really good rocket science happened. It's like applied common sense, but actually to do it well is really quite difficult.
Listen, I've got 2 more questions for you in just a moment. How value and price are linked, and also how value and loyalty are linked. So that's what we're going to be talking about in just a few moments' time. You're watching Business Connections Live. My guest on today's show is David Richards. He's the founder of Talk About Value, and we're talking about how to talk about your products and services so prospects want to buy them. I hope you found it an interesting program today. And I think the trouble is that we go out there, we know what we're trying to sell, and we just don't put the thought in that we need to put in. We don't even maybe understand the value of the products that we have, the skills that we have, the services that we provide. We don't understand that. Because we don't understand that, we don't sell it on in that particular way. It's a great show this today. And don't forget, you can catch up with David on LinkedIn. You can go there. You can also go to his website as well. His website is Talk About Value. And you can go on there, and we'll just have, there's the website, value proposition, help you create products or services that customers really want to buy. A little bit of David there chatting away. Value propositions are central to the business. There is a lot of information on here. You're going to have to plough your way. There's quite a lot of text, but plough your way through it, because the information that is here will be valuable to your organization. The other thing I like as well is also the vlogs, the articles that David writes. Can we just have a quick look at these? So some of the titles are really worth. Sources of business value, what are they? Just one word. Really interesting. It might just say something in a moment, but what might say something that will stay with that person for a long, long time. Market segmentation, what garden centers can teach us. There is so much great information on David's site. All you've got to do is just go along to talkaboutvalue.com, and you will be able to find all that out there. talking about value. If you'd like to raise your business profile, why don't you get in touch with us here at Business Connections Live and be an expert guest on the program? It's easy to do, and when you come on the program, you can there are assets that are generated here, and then what you can do is you use those assets in your own value proposition. When you're getting out, then you're trying to explain exactly what you do. It also positions you as well as an industry expert and thought leader. There is something in the psychology about being interviewed. Now, if you are a public speaker, if you do keynote presentations, do not think that doing this is the same as doing a presentation. The skills are very, very different. And those skills, this is the ideal opportunity to learn those skills and to expand on those skills as well. So if you'd like more details, I'll give you the telephone number again. It's 01784 256 777. There's the phone number. Should we give you the email too? studio@businessconnectionslive.com. You can go to our website. You can sign up. There's a whole load of information there. You can download some of our free documentation as well. We've got a fantastic book on how to handle the media that is completely free if you go to the website, businessconnectionslive.com. You're watching Business Connections Live. My guest on today's show is David Richards. He's the founder of Talk About Value, and we're talking about how to talk about your products and services so prospects want to buy them. Interesting show so far. I left you with two questions to mull over. How value and price are linked. But there's more. But yet there's more.
No. You just offered a book.
I did.
For free.
For free.
So my question is, how valuable is that? If you charge £10 for that,
well, if you go to Amazon, you have to pay for it. It's not free on Amazon, but for those people that come to our site and are interested in being part of the program and are resolute, are passionate in their raising their professional business profile, and they want to position themselves as industry experts and leaders in their market segment, then what we do is we say, look, if you are that committed to your progression in your career, then we will join you. We will commit with you. So you're right, there's nothing for free. But what we do, we offer the opportunity to download this book so that they can find out the key skills that they need to expand and grow their career.
I get it completely. It's just.
But that was a good pitch, though, wasn't it? That was a good pitch.
I think it's just interesting,
that we use the word free.
We use the word free, and actually, as you know, nothing's free, and the social media world is probably.
When I worked on the radio, you weren't allowed to say it. It was just one of the things. Nothing is for free. Nothing is for free, and it's just the terminology that we use. And if you look at the web is full of it. Download our free booklet, download our free white paper, and maybe what we need to do, all of us, is to step back a little bit and go, what is the value of the documentation that we are offering for download? Is it free? I know it's a trade most times.
Well, you might put a contact bar between you and the content so that you can't just download it.
That's details. It is. It's a trade, isn't it? You're trading email addresses.
Yeah.
So what is the value in an email address?
Well, exactly. That's a question we could spend a whole show on, I'm sure.
Okay. Meanwhile, back at the question in hand, how value and price are linked?
How value and price? Well, as we mentioned before, and we've just mentioned now, and expect if you've got something of value, expect to pay more because there's more perception of value. It's why brands are so important. You can sell more brands for more expensive because of pricing. The thing about pricing I find really interesting is that I've discovered that it's not as rational as people like to think it is.
You've been doing this now for nearly as a business. For nearly 2.5 years. Is it a year?
Yeah.
In that time, has your view on the way you price things changed?
Absolutely.
Are you selling time or are you selling expertise now?
I'm selling value. You'd expect me to say that.
I would.
Genuinely, when I do a proposal, I go in and I offer different levels of value because I don't want people to compare me with somebody just on price. So if they said, can you do this piece of work, I won't just give one price. I will think very hard about, well, I can do what you want me to do, but there's probably more I could do as well. So I will offer that as another price, or if there's something extraordinary I could offer you, or I think I could offer you, I'll also offer that. So it takes the conversation away from...
Is it wordplay, David?
No, because what you're actually doing is you're differentiating yourself from the competition who probably offering a day rate. You're basically saying, I'm going to do it for a fixed cost, so I'm taking the risk, yeah, and I'm going to offer this value to you, okay, for this amount of money. If somebody comes in and say they offer a day rate, it's very easy to say, well, it's going to take 3 days and then I might need a bit more and a bit more and a bit more. I think that's where consultants in general might get a bit of a bad rap because
they're selling time, aren't
because
they?
they're selling time. I'm trying to sell value. I'm trying to sell my expertise. And there's certain things that I would do for people where it really needs thinking, research, focus, effort, great effort in terms of understanding a concept or whatever, which requires quite a lot of time and effort to do it, and it can add real value. And I don't think you should necessarily charge the same as if you're writing a web headline, for example.
When you articulate that, do your customers, your prospects, do they understand when you articulate what you're trying to do? Because many of the prospects or many of the quotes they will get in will be day rates, won't they?
Yes, they will. I've never had that issue, in the sense that people know where they stand. They know that if they want to come in at so basically my lowest, my good, better, best, it's using that model. My good value would be basically what they can afford, based to the brief. And then I can say, there may be things I can offer more. And here's the value I can offer more. And therefore, if you're getting more value, I will charge you more for that. And likewise, you can then take that to the full step, to the top. The other thing about that is pricing, as I mentioned a few minutes ago, is not always rational. So you can use that to your benefit. And there's a great book which, if you get a chance to read it, it's called Predictably Irrational, by a guy in the States called Dan Ariely. And he gives a great example, and I'll sort of translate it from the American into
Do it quickly.
Very quickly. Basically, what it says is, if you take a group of people, and this is his experiment, and you ask them to take out their credit card, or in America it was social security number, and pick the last 2 digits of the credit card, might be 17, 18, 93, 41, and write that down on a piece of paper and put it away, and then within a few minutes just say, right, I've got a bottle of wine here, it's a 1974 Chateau Lafite, put a bid on that in an auction. They do the research and they find out that people whose credit card numbers were higher would bid more in that auction than people who had lower numbers. 2 completely separate activities, but your brain is being tasked and biased, and it's a bit like magic, isn't it? You're sent in a particular direction, and actually the real direction is over here. And that's where you can use value pricing, because if you say, well, actually, my full 100% Rolls-Royce option is £8,000, yeah, say for example, I'll give you a standard, or my best offer is £5,000, and then I'll offer you the good for £2,500. In relative terms, the £2,500 seems like a really good value compared to the £8,000. But if you're looking at it in absolute terms, that might be quite a lot of money for your business. But because you can see the value, you automatically think you're getting more value for money. So psychology plays a part.
We have got to talk about loyalty, because that leads on from the psychology of this. Loyalty, very, very briefly, I know this probably deserves a lot more time, but how value and the loyalty are linked together.
Okay, very briefly then, this is what I'm going to have to paint a picture in 1,000 words.
Right.
So imagine a 2x2 matrix, the standard model you get.
Yep.
Okay, if you've got high loyalty and low loyalty across one vertical axis, and you've got low and high value across the bottom, in the low value, low loyalty, you've got things like commodity items, but basically you're buying something on price. In the high value, high loyalty, you've got where you've really matched what people want to buy with what people want to sell, and you've got a sweet spot. The 2 bits I'm interested in is the bit where you're offering high value, so you're getting high loyalty with low value, and I think you're being very lucky because you're offering lots of value. And the other way is where you're offering high value but getting very low loyalty, and that means you've got hidden value that you haven't exploited. And you mentioned earlier what I see in businesses, and there's a lot of businesses who have hidden value. They're doing things that they don't realise their customers really value, and they're not charging for, and they're leaving money on the table.
Do you think that would have worked better with a visual aid, do you think?
It would have done. And it was less than 1,000 words.
Less than 1,000 words, but there you
tried.
go. Well done. You did your best. Listen, it's been a fantastic show with you, David. Really enjoyed it.
Thank you.
And it's made me think about the value proposition that we have within our business. We'll be talking more about value. What we ask all our guests to do is to look straight down camera number 4, the one over there, to say who they are, where they're from, and to give us the key takeaways from today's programme. The airways are all yours.
Okay. Hi, I'm David Richards and I'm the founder of Talk About Value. What I do with companies is to help them understand how to talk about their products, services and their professional expertise in a way that their prospects and customers want to buy it. And the way I do that is help them understand how to create, validate and then communicate their genuine value in a very busy and complex marketplace. Because if they do that, they'll not only be able to sell more, they'll be able to sell more profitably and also gain customer loyalty. So remember, there are 5 real types of values that you can use to your advantage. Number 1 is the economic value, the financial values, the typical ROI, the customer's willingness to pay. The second is the perceived value. What are they seeing in terms of your business that you can offer them? Brand is really important in that area, for example. The third one is basically the relationships you have with the customers, particularly in the business-to-business arena. You want long-term relationships, so look at the value you're offering through that. Offering contacts, offering thought leadership, helping people make their business even more effective. The fourth one is experiential value, the value you get from working with a company, the things that you can really get out of that relationship. And fifthly, the social value you can do if you're doing something where you're saying, well, it's not just about the profit, I'm giving something back to society. You can then list those out yourself and put that on a spreadsheet, for example, but what you need to do is validate that with your customer. Value, like beauty, is in the eye of the beholder. You need to talk to your customers more regularly than you do today, because if you understand them at a really deep level, you'll understand what they really appreciate and what they'll pay for. So that's what I would say. If you want to find out more, please go to my website, talkaboutvalue.com, or go to my LinkedIn page. I'm writing articles on a regular basis about this topic, and I'm very happy to share that with people throughout business. I hope you've enjoyed the show, and back to Steve.
Blimey, I've never had that before. Thank you very much, David. A really great show today. I hope you found it useful and informative. And maybe if it started a small gem in your mind's eye at the moment, you think to yourself, I get what they're talking about. It isn't just about selling my time anymore. It's about selling the value in my business to prospects. Then maybe it's going to help you, but pricing is going to help you maybe promote better. It'll maybe help you look at your business in a slightly different way. A really, really great show today, David. Thank you very much indeed. Coming up on future programmes, well, we've got Woking Hospice. They're going to be joining us because they actually have relationships with the local business community. They're coming in on the programme to explain how that works and how local businesses up and down the country, so you're going to have local hospices near you, how businesses can interact. So that's going to be a really interesting programme. That's coming up in the near future. Jerry Brown, the customer lifeguard, will be on the programme as well. He's back for the 3rd time, I think it is, so we're looking forward to that. Martine Robbins, the HR department, she's going to be on the programme too. That's a really good show. I'm looking forward to that one. We were talking about this lady before we came on air today. We used a few of her phrases as well, just a little bit famous. Penny Haslam, she's the award-winning inspirational speaker. She's going to be on the show. And an old friend of the programme from some of the very early programmes, in fact, Warren Knight, professional speaker. He's going to be coming and he's going to be talking about where he is at the moment. He's a digital marketeer and he's going to be talking about his upcoming book. So looking forward to having Warren back on the programme. Suna Armstrong, speaker and author. Got loads of them coming on the programme very shortly. Deborah Hume, she's the director of Minerva Engagement. We're going to be talking about all things when it comes to psychology and things like that. Listen, that wraps up today's programme. Thank you very much indeed for your company. Why don't we do it all again next Monday at 12 noon? But from myself, Steve Harlan, and from David Richards, thank you for watching. See you next week when we're live again.
Business Connections Live, the UK's leading online business channel.